Meeting of the Amherst Township Trustees called to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Abraham.
Here.
Lynch.
Here.
Urick.
Yes.
Fish. All present. All righty. You have in front of you the meeting minutes from the end of the year meeting and the 2021 organizational meeting from 12/22/20.
Okay.
Trustee Lynch, did you want me to read through all of those, or?
No, there's, Chris is, I know everybody's received this ahead of time and had the opportunity to look at it, and since the organizational meeting is always very long and detailed, in this case 5 pages, that as long as the board's reviewed this ahead of time, I'm just going to make a motion that we approve the 2020 end of year meeting and 2021 organizational meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Lynch?
Yes.
Abraham?
Yes.
Urick?
Yes.
Then you also have in front of you the financials, which are very sparse for the first 12 days of the year because there was not much going on. Revenue, year-to-date is 0. Expenditures, are $15,094.86. That's because I'm in the process also of finishing year end, which is going smoothly, thankfully, and so nothing's been closed out to move funds over. You've got the payment listing in front of you, which is pretty basic. Our December payments for our federal monies, really nothing out of the ordinary. Maybe Amherst Utilities Department, the $1,939.27. That's always larger in January because we pay for our hydrant rental.
But it looks like, so it's not the, what did you say on the Amherst Utilities? There is nothing paid there right now?
No, it's larger this month, or in the payment listing here, because of hydrant rental.
Okay.
Is always included at the beginning of January.
Okay, this isn't going to the fire department, it's going to utilities?
Correct.
All right.
We pay rental to the utilities, and we pay flushing to the fire department.
Our revenue is 0, and our expenditures are $15,094.86, and that's typical when we start the year.
Yes.
We understand that. It'll really probably be the March, April at the latest before we get the influx of revenue from the property tax. Are there any other questions on the payments or financials?
No, I have none.
Okay, then can I have a motion to pay the bills and approve the financial reports with reservation?
So move.
Second?
Urick?
Yes.
Abraham?
Yes.
Lynch?
Yes. Anything else there, Chris?
That is it. Other than, like I said, year end is, I'm in the process now, and hopefully that'll be done this weekend.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, I'd like to welcome everyone in attendance. If anyone has anything to bring before the board, please raise your hand. Okay, Colin, and just for formality, state your name and where you live.
Colin Cerny, 8023 Overland Road. First, like just say that the new camera system is fantastic. Haven't been able to make much of the meetings lately, but being able to see it on YouTube is very helpful. Second thing, I just wanted to ask, over the past few meetings, 26 has come up, it's a possible meeting. Is that still tentative, or is that secured yet?
No, I'm gonna state something that my
Okay.
fellow board members don't know yet. but that's going to have to be delayed. And I'm going to ask, and this will be in your packet too, Colin, though it won't include everything I'm stating right now, so we'll just cover this now. I was going to cover this under zoning. The trustees go in your packet, you're going to see a document. It's titled Amherst Township, Amherst Consolidated Properties Public Hearing, and there's a subtitle, Lorraine County Board of Commissioners Meeting Room Availability for a Public Hearing and Technology Testing. The individual mentioned there, Dave Welch, is the current technology supervisor for Lorraine County Board of Commissioners. And earlier in this email string, you're going to see the former IT director copied on here, Cameron McDonald, in addition to our legal counsel, Gerald Ennis, also the former county administrator, executive assistant, Sandy Strozak. As the board's aware, there's been changeover in the elected office of the county, so that's changed personnel. So it's made it difficult working through this, but what we did find out, just prior to Cameron leaving his employment with the county, where we had been led to believe that the technology at the Lorraine County Transportation Center could accomplish everything we had here, they found out it could not. So they were working, how can we still get this to happen? And with Cameron, I thought we might have had something in place, but that wasn't, it still would have been clumsy and would have been tough meeting this time deadline, but once he was no longer under the employ of the county, it made it even more difficult. So I was then given Dave Welch as the next individual to work with, and it was also suggested by the new county administrator, Tom Williams, hey, perhaps consider the county administration building because they thought their technology there might work. But we found out with Dave Welch, it doesn't. They get too much feedback through. Most of theirs, they've had meetings, not necessarily public hearings, certainly not large public hearings where they would have people at the meeting room and also give them the opportunity to be at home. Because our concern is we still don't know where this COVID situation is. So we just found this out late Friday. That's why my colleagues here are hearing this for the first time. I spoke with the prosecutor's office already about this because once we found out it couldn't work, I've had a discussion with Tom Williams again as to what alternatives there were. Also, if you read through, once you get a chance to digest all this documentation, probably at home, you're going to see that the former IT director was trying to direct me, well, look at using the college as an option, which is an option. But I need to talk to Trustee Urig and Trustee Abraham before we even start down that path. Because now you start getting the things where there's a cost involved, and I can't make that unilateral decision. There's also been put out as a potential of Golden Acres as a site, because that's right here in our township, which might be easier access for our residents that want to be there in person, but we might have to bring the technology in so that we could have people here in the township hall, which would be a much more limited group, a physical group, and also a group over at Golden Acres, and then see if we can get it where we have a group that could participate at home. But we don't know yet if we can do that, because as soon as Golden Acres was put out as an option, I said, do you even have furniture over there? Are there chairs? Are there tables? You know, are the restrooms maintained? Because you know what it's like when people come in, and that they were going to check into yesterday, but I've been in contact with no one that, hey, did you get over there Monday to find out what you have? But the soonest, in my discussion with the prosecutor's office, the soonest we would have that public hearing then would be the fourth Tuesday in February. And most likely, Colin, on any public hearing, we would probably be leaning towards the trustees typically meet on the fourth Tuesday. It makes it easier for me as the chair in scheduling things if I can use that date as a public hearing, because I know David, Denny, Chris, you know, they've got full-time, you know, work schedules they've already made accommodations to work the trustee meetings in. So that in February, that would be February 23rd at the soonest. So there's no date set yet.
Okay.
But as I said, it's just, we found out Friday, and I instructed Linda, don't send the public notice out. I received yesterday, which would have been Monday, January 11th, the developer wanted a copy of the public notice. Let them know there is no public notice, we have to delay this. And he said, okay, just keep them informed. I spoke with the prosecutor today because I had questions from a legal standpoint I needed answers to. In the event David or Denny have these questions, hey, what can we do, what can't we do now that we found out the county does not have the technology to do this? And, you know, which was really surprising because the board here had met with the former county administrator, you know, some time ago, months ago, to make sure this could move forward. And I'm sure when things change, I can't say I'm sure, I just suppose probably when the election results change, you know, people's interest, you know, in accommodating the township probably just wasn't there. So short answer is the hearing's delayed, don't know exactly when, but it'd be February 23rd at the soonest.
Okay.
Okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, I just, so Dave and Denny know, because I did have this down to be discussed on the agenda under zoning, just so you understand our options, we still want to try and accommodate people that are at home, that whether they have, it may not be the specific individual, though it could be, it may be somebody else in their home that they're concerned with contracting COVID, so they don't want to attend in person, is I'd like to still have where we can set the meeting so people have that option. They don't have to physically be there. But our choice is, as it appears right now, and there's been no investigation on this at all, so this is all premature to give anything definitive. One, as the former Lorraine County IT director suggested, hey, maybe consider the college. I just don't know if we did that, what the expense is on that. The assumption being that being a college that you would hope has the technology, that this could be accommodated there. So we would still have the college as one location, the township as another location, and then individuals able to communicate at home as long as they have tablet, computer, laptop, smartphone, you know, something with a camera on it. The other option is we have the township hall and Golden Acres, but then the township's probably going to have to get an estimate on what would it be to get temporary technology available at Golden Acres, and also that the county has at least the chairs and preferably tables there to keep people appropriately social distance, but be able to participate. So we would have the township, Golden Acres, and again the option to do it at home. The other thing, which I don't have an answer yet from a legal standpoint, is not knowing what the courts are going to decide, and this is now gets into Judge Rothgary's court, is how much will they accommodate us in the COVID environment in terms of delays and how we conduct this, because if it comes down to it and we can't, the biggest issue is going to be accommodation of people at home that can't, for whatever reason, let me put, for the reason of COVID, can't attend the meeting in person, since we're in this public pandemic. Is that something that legally we have to accommodate? You know, right now we want to accommodate it, but that's one of the questions we don't know, because we're fighting two things here: is what does the court say as this case moves forward versus if we go through with a public hearing on a potential settlement agreement, can we delay that? How long? Then if we delay it, what if we don't have the technology or it's way too expensive to accommodate people at home? Can we just say, your only option is you come to the public hearing, to hear what's going on or state your concerns, and if you don't show up, that's beyond our control. So I don't have answers from a legal standpoint, but I guess the question is from you guys is, if there's a cost involved, what are you comfortable with to put on a presentation where we have the option of physical location for people to come in and also the option of people participating at home? And figure that's one is Township, Golden Acres, at home is the one option. The second option is the college, the township, and people at home. Those are the two options we'd be looking at. They'd somewhat be whatever the cost is. And I don't know what that is because I've made no contacts with anybody. I want to discuss it with you guys first.
I do know the college is not holding any meetings.
Oh, no? Okay.
Because I was just informed this week of a committee that I'm on. They're not letting people on campus. We're going back to Zoom.
Okay.
Well, then, before we can offer input, we're gonna need to know what facilities are available.
Yeah, well, and this comes, the meeting we just had with the county over sewers and water, with the county sanitary engineer. Denny is, doing things sequentially versus serially. That's why I want to try and get it all at once but before I start approaching anyone, I want to talk with you and David, because I can't make a unilateral decision. I appreciate what Chris said, but I would end up contacting community college anyway. We're not talking the immediate, we're talking the soonest, February 23rd. Then also work with the county, but only if you guys agree. I can also contact someone in terms of the technology. What would it cost? You bring in the technology that we're talking about a time frame from, say, for them, they obviously need time coming in early and finishing up. So say a 4-hour window from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock with a meeting beginning at 7 and ending at 9:30. That, what would it cost? Here are the parameters. There would be a physical location at the township where people could communicate from here. Another location, most likely Golden Acres, could also be the county administration building, and then people at home. Give me what that cost is, and I can give what I need in terms of microphones, the whole bit. There's all the cleanup afterwards. But I just want you guys to be aware of the situation.
For example, I know it was with COVID funds, but we did purchase much equipment, media equipment. I would think it goes into a couple thousand. It may go up to that. I don't know. When you start talking moving equipment, renting equipment, maybe even having to buy additional equipment, you're going to probably run into some money.
Yeah, and at this point, I don't see buying equipment, David. What we might have to do, and this is another question, even the logistics. Whereas before, we thought this board, our legal representative, and the actual physical presentation of the developers would be at the County Transportation Center, being the largest physical room that most people would probably want to be where that presentation is. So that was the intent. And then we've got the technology here. So we're looking at this hall. We could safely accommodate 15 people. Could be more, because we don't know if people came in, a husband, wife, anyone from the same household could sit at the same table. Okay, we could do more, but we knew we could accommodate 15.
Somebody would come in and speak their mind and step out, somebody else could come in.
Well, let me finish. Well, that's possible, but then now you got to have someone to control that. But our thing was not to have them all queued up out in the parking lot and texting to tell someone when they come in and how do you do that, who do you draw in. The thought process was, and it's also explained in this documentation, the original plan was we would be at the transportation center. People would see on this screen the full presentation. They would see everybody that's there. Then the intent was the prosecutor's office and the trustees would introduce why we're there, what the intent was, how we got to that point. Then the developer would put on a presentation of what's changed in their development per negotiation within the court system. Then we would take what we thought would be the largest physical group of people, let them in the public hearing, go to the mic. I was originally expecting there'd be at least 2 sections, so you present one, sanitize one, and flip-flop back and forth. But in any case, they could stay their piece, so now you hear that group, which we would assume was a larger group. Then the plan was come to the people physically located at the township. And let's say it's at least 15 people, you hear from that group, and both sides see it, everyone at home sees it. Then you would go to the people at home, who at that point would have all been muted, and it asked them to raise their hand, and we'd pick one at a time, and they would state if they even had a concern. Because the hope would be that once you've heard the people that we originally thought would be at the transportation center, you've heard the people of the township, there's a good chance your concern or question was already brought up. So whereas I thought I had something I wanted to ask, I no longer need to ask it because somebody else asked it. So why bring up the same thing again, other than maybe saying I agree with so-and-so, or my concern's the same as so-and-so. But that was the intent. So now that can happen is we've got to look at what the alternatives are, and what I see is what I thought might have been an alternative, as the former IT director said, look at the college. I will double check what Chris just said is probably the case. The college is going to say no, just from the standpoint of the coronavirus pandemic. So that then leaves us with the option of Golden Acres, Transportation Center, County Administration Building, but in any one of those options, the township would have to provide the technology, because the former board did not use any of those COVID funds to upgrade to handle a large public hearing. We don't know that we're going to have a large public hearing, but we've got to plan as if there is a large public hearing, because I don't recall the exact number that's signed in, but I know that we've got over 100 chairs, and the township put out every single chair we had, and this was just before the pandemic shut down, and we had people standing up along the wall. And we just can't do that in today's environment. So if this board, if you want to put an amount to it, or if you say no, just go out and investigate it and come back at the next meeting, I can have, hopefully by the next meeting, have some numbers. Is we need to find out what are the options, what are the costs. Meanwhile, the prosecutor office has to tell us what we're legally bound to do, because once you see those costs, it may be, well, okay, if you cut out trying to accommodate everybody at home, that's this level. And that may decide which direction you want to go. But we need to know what legally we have to do, because that was our intent, to include anybody that wanted to be here, to give them that option and do it safely. But we've since then found out that utilizing the county facilities, they do not have the technology to accommodate that. And their CARES money has already all been spent. I think I was told there might be like $4,000 remaining. That's it. So,
Well, my only question right now, well, 2 questions. We have to look, we have to find out what exactly is available, how many can be accommodated at each place. The second thing would be, what happens if everybody goes to one place and nobody goes to the other ones? If everyone would come down here and you can only hold 15 and you got, 40, 50 people out there, they have to go somewhere else. should things be set up ahead of time? Kind of a pre-registration, who's gonna be down here, who's gonna be at the other places? Otherwise, I'm afraid it could be chaos, and if you tell people to show up at 6:30, they may not, have enough time to get somewhere else.
All right, David, let me explain the other details in this without, I don't know if you want to get into all that detail tonight, but I'm going to rely on our township administrator in putting together the appropriate documentation. We work with them. We've already gone through and double-checked the original list that the developers and the BZA had, because we did find some errors in there. Oh, they got from Remy any of the returned envelopes that came back that were undeliverable. And I don't recall the exact number, but they're it's like 43, 44 direct property owners that are immediately adjacent to this proposed development. They would get their specific letter. The prosecutor gave us exactly what to publish in for the required statutory publication, because we had first put together language, they asked to see it, we sent it over, they made some adjustments to that, so we've got that information. The letter that we would send out would indicate to the individuals where the optional locations are. So if they get the 3 options, 2 physical, 1 Zoom, it will explain what it is. If it's going to be a virtual, that's the choice they make. They are going to have to contact the township administrator as far as getting on a list so we know how many there are. And that may be limited. This was one of the legal questions that was presented to the prosecutor, since originally we were told we could use the county Zoom license. We wouldn't have to purchase a separate one, because the county's obviously got a big interest in this development, but theirs is for 25 people. Is that a problem if that's limited to 25 people? And realize that cuts it down to 23 people if the township's one physical site and the other one's another site, because they will take 2 of those seats. So is that okay from a legal standpoint? Realize we're getting into all new ground that hasn't been covered before. But
It's actually more, because it would be one, Denny would have a laptop, you would have a laptop, David would have a laptop, I would have a laptop, prosecutor would have a laptop, the presenters would have a laptop. That
maybe
would all
unless
be zooming in.
Yeah, maybe unless we switch it, which I didn't even get into that option where the presentation is here, then we don't need that because we have the technology. Okay, so again, there's a lot here, and this is, I guess, what I want to get to. I don't want to be second guessed every step of the way, but to your point, Linda would send out the letter first that goes right to the adjacent property owners. Then we would put it on the township website, and it would go across social media. What we figured we have to have here is several individuals, and I realize we're using township volunteers to control what comes in. It would be explained to people, if this is the one location, we say 15, that if you come in late, these doors are going to be locked once we've reached capacity. We're saying we start at 6 o'clock, which would explain to them, even though the public hearing doesn't begin until 7. So it's just like you want to go to a sporting event, and there's no assigned seats, and you want the prime seat, you show up early. If you show up late, then you go to the alternate location. You've got plenty of time to get to the alternate location. The alternate location, then you go in. If you're at home, you sit there, you sign on. Once you've called Linda, you've got your sign in. I sign in to see what this event's going to be, and I know it starts at 7 o'clock. We've tried to put the ending time, a definite ending time, at 9:30, so there's time to clear people out, knowing that people are going to talk for a while, and then clean up the mess. Desanitize, whatever has to be done. So that's what the intent is. This will be fully explained, but once we reach that point, if you have specific questions, it's probably more important to bring them up there, David, but is there anything from the concept? You realize there's a lot of moving parts here. If you have a big disagreement, I'm going to ask you, do you want to lead it? And you explain to me how you would do it.
No, I'm just putting forth just some thoughts.
All right, well, what do you recommend we do?
Well, first you let people know, and then perhaps we have to pre-register. If someone gets down here and it's, 20 minutes or 30 minutes before the meeting and it's full, then, they've got time to go to another location.
Yeah,
So, do it that way, we may consider pre-registration, this was a thought,
all right.
I
Well, this
put
is
this
nothing
through.
new. We discussed this when we had Jim Cordez here at a previous meeting that you were at.
Yeah, I know, it just came into my head.
One of the other questions that came up was we didn't know if you could register for a public hearing.
Yeah, I didn't ask the prosecutor's office that question, but,
Because you should be, if you wanted to go. But I mean, now it's.
well,
We were-
our
we were
registration
just
is
thinking-
because of the sign up virtually, so we knew, and then we were hoping, and this was a discussion that Linda asked me, is, hey, maybe we ask them to call in. It's not putting it as a requirement, and this one I did discuss with the prosecutor previously, the previous prosecutor, our representative, Jerry Innes, is that it wouldn't be a requirement, but it's just like RSVP. Okay, somebody always shows up that did an RSVP, but the intent was to get a feel for how many people, because as this board has shared in previous meetings, we really don't think the level of interest will be as high or as intense as a previous meeting where we had well over 100, because many of those concerns have been addressed, they've been discussed at this meeting, and some of those people are aware of what those concerns are. There's others they aren't going to know at all. And I'm certainly not paying attention to the chatter on social media, because that'll drive you crazy. But we don't know what the interest is, so the thing is, we'll get a feel for it. Oh, geez, I only had 30 people RSVP. We're probably not going to have much of an issue. And
Would you be able to move the trucks out and put chairs in the garage area? Have it in here and have laptops? I mean,
yeah, with the equipment in there, that we used to have to, this used to be the garage, and we were always concerned with tools and equipment, walking. And so then it put a burden on our road department. They were trying to get everything locked up. Then we were putting tarps, dropping them over to hide, at least put it behind the tarp so you see the person that's peeking behind.
You can always rent some tents and stick them outside.
Pardon?
You can always rent some tents and stick them
Well,
out.
you've got New Russia Township been brought up, the potential. There's all sorts of options here, but at this point, I need from this board that they understand what the situation is. There may be some costs involved. Do they want to set a threshold amount, or they want to just leave it open? Let me go check on some options, bring it back at the next meeting, but we have to be moving quickly. So that's the situation we have here. So I can't tell you exactly when it'll be, I can't tell you exactly where it'll be, how many locations it'll be, but everything is being focused on accommodate as many people as we possibly can. Because the last thing I want to do is have anybody say, you tried to do this without informing us, because that is not the case. We're trying to do everything we can to include as many people as we can, as many options as we can, but still do it safely. So you guys have any objections to me on checking options?
No.
Do you even want to set a threshold level, or just see what I get as to what the numbers are?
See what you get as the numbers are.
Okay. All right?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because right now, what do you say, 2,000, and what if it's 2,100? Yeah, there's something more than that. We won't know till we start getting some numbers.
Okay, and David, if you have any other specific question as far as notifications going out, I would suggest you contact Linda, because though we'll be working back and forth, to double check each other, contact her, because she's already got formulated some kind of language, but we can't put in dates and location till we know where. But you can see, even through this, and you see it started committing things to writing, because I wasn't feeling comfortable with verbal responses I was getting, and this is only a part, trust me, there's been a lot of conversation going on this. And when I started feeling uncomfortable, like I gotta put this in writing, exactly what our requirements are, okay? All right, we'll move on then. We were on welcome correspondence and announcements. Chris?
I do have a couple of things I wanted to note to the trustees, that the Otarma ballot for the election of board members was received and carried out as voted on per Resolution 11-1220 to approve the appointment of Marcia Funk for the Otarma board when documentation was received. That's been taken care of. We also received correspondence, and I believe I put it in everybody's mailbox, including our zoning inspector regarding, from the Lorraine County Recorder regarding filing zoning resolutions and amendments in the office of the county recorder. The zoning inspector will have to determine what, if anything, needs to be filed and filed by January 5th.
All right, good. Yeah, and I saw that from the county recorder. That comes every year.
Right.
All right, and that's it? All right, David?
I have nothing at this time.
Okay, Denny?
Nothing at this time.
All right, we'll move on to reports. Ambulance, Denny?
Nothing under ambulance.
Okay. Sheriff isn't here, and obviously that's all because of COVID. And Linda, you did see the one email about checking with Matt, our community
I
policing.
did, and I
rep.
sent an email over to Matt, and I have not heard from him.
Okay.
I'll check with him again tomorrow. I believe I sent that Monday.
Okay, yeah, and that's not time sensitive either, but, you know, at least if we get cleared up on some of that as to what the residents' concern was, and,
And I just asked him to review and to give us some guidance,
yeah,
so we can
okay,
respond.
thank you. Okay, the zoning, Remy?
There's been zero activity as far as permits. We're back to 0 houses year-to-date now for the new year. January the 27th at 7 o'clock is going to be the organizational meeting for the ZBA. February the 3rd, there'll be an area variance for 5857 Overland Road.
January the 27th.
7
is
o'clock.
The meeting. Oh, that's Wednesday?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Okay.
Is the February date? 3rd?
January the 27th is the organizational
I
meeting.
get that.
For the
February
BZA.
3rd.
And February the 3rd will be an area variance for 5857 Overland Road.
What is that variance for?
That's a 3-foot side area variance for, he's rebuilding a garage.
A garage?
Yeah, over on Overland Road. He's a little bit too close to his neighbor.
Oh,
It's
okay.
where the original garage was at. He wants to rebuild right on the original pad.
So he's just rebuilding on the current pad?
Correct, he tore down the old garage.
So essentially, this was a non-conforming use.
But it was over 50%.
He got caught.
Well, he wouldn't be caught if it was an old garage and he took down.
He tore down the old garage and started rebuilding a new garage without getting a permit.
But in the, well, that's one thing, a permit, but the variance is, it was previously a non-conforming use, so if I understood you correctly, he's building the garage on the same footprint he had the original garage?
That is correct.
Okay. And I wouldn't see that as an issue, because we've pretty much routinely, when it's usually one of the mortgage companies or the realtor that's trying to sell a property that's currently non-conforming, if you recall, the people that are providing the loan have asked from the trustees some sort of document that if if the structure is destroyed, they can rebuild on the same footprint, and I've never known us to say no to that.
No, usually it's like, I don't think it's going to be a big deal at all.
Okay.
There may be a really odd circumstance at some point where you would want to say no, but for the most part, if you're just redoing what was there. general.
Thanks, Remy. I do have a couple of items here for zoning.
Is Tommy off the board completely now?
Yes.
Okay.
Glenn resigned. That would have been effective December 31st. And so what we've got is, if you go in your packet, the very next, or the prepared resolution here, the zoning commission met for their organizational meeting on January 7th. And I'm sorry, that's 2020. I don't recall what the, you have to check that. But in any case, the zoning commission already met, and they actually have appointed Lonnie Dillon as the chair. Let me get.
As the chair?
Yes.
Yes.
Because Glenn Tomey was the former chair, so Lonnie Dillon was appointed chairperson, Jim Conradi vice chair, and Gino Italiano was appointed the zoning commission secretary at their organizational meeting. Well, with that, it was also pointed out that Gino was the first alternate on the zoning commission. So this resolution here is just to formalize things, and without going through the whereases here, and I'll make this motion, is that Mr. Lonnie Dillon of 340 Copper Creek, Amherst, Ohio, located in the unincorporated area of Amherst Township, shall be appointed to the zoning commission for the remainder of the term previously held by Mr. Glenn Tomey, such term expiring on December 31st, 2024, and such appointment shall be effective January 1st of 2021. Section 2, if the trustees do not appoint a successor for Mr. Dillon at the end of his term, Mr. Dillon shall serve until a successor is appointed and qualified. And the rest is boilerplate, and I just realized, Chris, I forgot that since I'm using a template, that adopted should have your name on it. I thought I had that. I probably saved the wrong one.
Oh.
I will second that motion.
Okay, is there any question here as to what's happening? I mean, Lonnie's currently an alternate. He's served on quite a few of the actual meetings, so that the zoning commission has. He's always shows up, well, I shouldn't say always, but the majority of meetings I've been to, he's at, whether he was required or not. But since he was willing to step up as a chairperson, which has significant responsibilities, it's necessary to appoint him as a regular alternate and to take the place of Glenn's term. Okay, roll call, Chris?
Lynch?
Yes?
Abraham?
Yes.
Euring?
Yes?
And the number on that, Chris?
1421.
421.
11421?
1-4.
14.
04.
Okay, the second item deals with the secretarial services for the zoning boards. Again, using a template, I have a template set up for our organizational meetings. What I didn't change on the template is at the 2020 organizational meeting, the trustees upgraded the secretarial service from a wage class C to a wage class E. And I
Do
don't...
you have one?
Pardon?
Do you have this?
I
That
have-
resolution? You got one. I have an
Yeah.
extra one then.
Oh.
Where'd that come from?
Okay, well, you got an extra one, but you got the one we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's why I brought it up. I thought somebody was without
No.
one.
No, I don't know, David, I've got one here, but in any case... Yeah, upgraded from an E to C, and we'll read that through as we go through this. Oh, this is...
Fiscal year 2020.
Wait a minute, hang on a second. I don't think that's correct, Georgie. Bear with me, let me get a document here. all these questions, Yeah, okay, I thought you were saying it's not correct on the paper. So it's going from E to C. Okay. I think that's my hearing, and I don't even have a mask on. Why does a mask affect your hearing, right?
What?
Well, let me get this out so you also have the numbers. I do have it here.
2920?
Yeah, to be going from E, which was $13.83 an hour, to C, which is $20.35 an hour for secretarial services. So all this resolution is doing is correcting the error so that was made at the org meeting, and I'm assuming you guys expect that to be an error. There was no intent to reduce that wage class down to 13 something an hour, but it's so the resolution, I'll make this motion that the zoning board secretarial service in fiscal year 2021 shall be compensated at a wage class C effective January 1st, 2021. This resolution shall supersede motion number 12/29/20, and the rest is boilerplate, so that'll be my motion.
I will second that motion.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, roll call,
Lynch?
Chris? Yes?
Abraham?
Yes.
Uri?
Yes.
And just so the trustees are aware, I know Gino is going to be their secretary. I did let them know at the zoning commission, it doesn't have to be a board member. It's just the difficulty is finding someone to come up here that, at least their meetings are set on a specific day and time, but to get somebody to come up to a meeting 12 to 14 times a year and then go back home and put the minutes together and whatnot, and, for a couple $100 or whatever it's going to turn out to be, $400-600 at the most. That's hard to do, but I told them if they can do it, they can. And there's also the potential, if they talk with the BZA, they could get someone to do both of them, but it'd have to be someone that is committed to being at the meetings, not haphazard. So really, if you guys know anybody willing to do this, the hourly rate is good at $20.35. It's just that there wouldn't be a whole lot of hours, unless we get into something like that BZA public hearing for the Amherst Consolidated Properties, then you got involved with attorneys and court recorders and the whole bit. But if you know somebody that wants to do that, I'm sure the zoning boards would appreciate it. I know the BZA is using Georgianne right now. I think when she agreed to that, she thought it'd be low frequency, but as we're all aware, last year there was a lot of demand on that group, and Remy's just mentioned we've got one coming up already here in the first month. So if you guys know somebody that you feel comfortable with and would be willing to attend something that's a low frequency, by all means, bring the name forward. But it's up to those boards who they select. And we made that clear to them. All the trustees are doing is budgeting for that position. And Chris, that was 1.5?
That was 1.5.
Mark that in here. Okay, and we already covered the public hearing notice. Alan's question. Okay, the next two documents, these are, one is for we just received from the City of Amherst, the fourth quarter 2020 calls that are out there. It's a pie chart, and I had Linda print the fourth quarter of 2019 so we could do a comparison. Realize the Amherst Fire Department is just gaining a lot of experience with their new software program, but at this point, Chief Wilhelm has provided these pie charts. You can see that in 2020, he now shows those incidences north of the turnpike versus south of the turnpike. I know these are copied in black and white, so you lose some of that identification there. And the other thing to point out, this fourth quarter 2020 was shortened a bit so that we could actually, at that point, we still thought we had to have the CARES expenditures completed by the end of 2020. And I think it was like the last day of the year, or second last day of the year, that got extended by the state and the federal legislation. But we just didn't want to take a chance on that since that was being held up. But you can see for the quarters that total calls are pretty similar here. We may, as time goes on in discussions with the city of Amherst, I know that they have some concerns. They think that there needs to be some additional training at 911 as far as when we have first responder call-outs. Because even starting 2019, they see this ticking up, and they believe many times they're being called out and it's not necessary. Life Care is able to handle it. If you recall, there was a protocol that we signed on our last fire contract as to when we would have the first responders toned out. So I know in talking with the mayor and the chief, they just think it's some training of personnel. But with, again, the changeover in administration, we thought, let's wait till they get their sea legs under them, also see what the history is here, and we may have some discussion at the county level, because not only costing the township, since we have a contract with the city, it also costs the city, because the same thing's happening in their community. So, you know, with being a volunteer department, they have all these individuals show up, you know, and it's not a huge number on first responder, but they're still showing up and going out, and then they're being called off or find out it was unnecessary. So we all agree that when in doubt, send them out. But we still, with some additional training of getting back to the intent of the first responders going out for specific calls that 911 will obtain the information from the caller, is that we might be able to do a better job on that. So that's just for your information. And the Chief Wilhelm in the future will be given trend line charts also for history, because you don't see that in the pie chart. But again, they're just gaining more knowledge and experience. They have a whole new software application in place. Okay, we'll move on then to roads, parks, and cemetery. Superintendent Smarsh.
Okay, well, for starters, we had some bad weather over the holidays. It was some pretty bad snow. We got through that with no troubles. We've been on a pothole run. We've pretty much, since the weather has been cooperating, we've been able to pretty much keep up with that. We also are on some ditch cleaning, and we are going to make a round this week here to trash collect out of the ditches in the township. We received our first order of salt, which was 100 ton. We tore out a catch basin today, rebuilt the top of it. We'll be pouring the concrete back tomorrow, and hopefully...
Where's that at?
537 Fieldstone. And hopefully by the end of Thursday, we will have another one tore out and rebuilt, which is across the road, and have that poured back. We cleaned out the shed across the road and was able to get the compressor and hot box and our little yard cart, and, you know, wheelbarrow, a couple things stored over there. So we got a little bit more room over here, which was definitely needed with the new vehicles. That helped out tremendously. Other than that, everything seems to be riding pretty good so far this year, and we are on our regular equipment maintenance schedule right now, so we'll have that all be taken care of for the end of next week. The MS4, that report was sent out last week, and for next week, which it's due the end of February, would be the annual compost report. A couple other things that I needed to get finished up with, and then I'll meet up with Linda. We'll get that all squared away and get that report sent in. Other than that, everything seems to be going pretty good, and that's it.
Having those 2 lights you called in, they were fixed within a day or 2.
They say if they have up to 3 days that they'll report to a light, and that depends on the technicalities of it. If it's just a light bulb, they usually get it done within that day to the next day. If there's a little bit more involved,
Yeah.
sometimes it might take up to 5 days.
Okay. And one other thing, Kevin, is unfortunately I was not able to be part of the virtual meeting for the Round 35 with the OPWC district. Unfortunately, because of some health issues in the family, that negated me from being part of that. But the South Dewey Road project was approved. Just so the rest of the board knows, the Hidden Valley concrete was not. I do not have the detail, though, where we stood on the scoring of that, so I don't know if we're close. As you're aware, that's still a possibility, but it did not make the initial funding round. So that'll be a wait and see. I should have asked Bob while he was here if they could send us the actual paperwork that would have been presented at that meeting with the actual scoring. Okay. But Dewey Road's there. As soon as we get our officials from the state, you know, we'll get that prepared to get out for bid.
Okay, I do have one point. I had asked you some time ago, and you were gonna do it the next day or whatever, to put some gravel down. Will you be able to get to that sometime soon?
Yeah, you asked me that on Friday, and I got waylaid yesterday, and then we got into that catch basin, so by
Okay.
Friday, it'll be there.
Okay, good enough. You gonna do the whole drive, or you
Yeah,
just?
yeah,
Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
yep.
I appreciate it.
Are there any other questions for Kevin?
No, I just had that one. Thank you, Kevin.
Mhm.
Okay, Senior Services and Township Administrator Linda Ashley.
The only thing that I can report is I've been getting quite a few phone calls from the elderly population inquiring about the COVID vaccine. And I did look up on Lorraine County Public Health. They're under the phase 1B, which is 65 and older, according to the Public Health Board Services. They said end of January, possibly the beginning of February, that they start the vaccine out. I instructed everybody to call, give them the phone number, and phone call, directly, at the moment to see what they are.
Right.
Delay.
Well, hopefully they get, Linda, I haven't looked in the last week, but they had, for 1A, they had a link where you could sign up to get a feel. 1B, they didn't have that link active yet, so I'm hoping they put something like that, but I know that Health Commissioner Koval has indicated repeatedly that they plan to roll it out similar to the way they did with flu shots. And, you know, I'm watching myself, obviously, for when that's there
Yeah.
to
A
go.
lot, a big problem for a lot of them are that people don't have computers. So
Okay.
they're not on the computer to be able to check and to sign up. So that's why I've given them phone numbers and just told them to call. I've also instructed them that they could call me back and that I would, you know, investigate too on their behalf. A few people called and asked if we would be giving them here, and we have no plans to do that, so.
Yeah, we don't, a lot of it is because of the way they still want to maintain the distancing. I know they've discussed New Russia Township as being a possibility, and that's where some of the Group 1A was already done. The college is another location, then Lorraine County Fairgrounds. Those are the only ones I know they've discussed right now, where they feel they can quickly and safely move people through with those shots. And right now, it's still the 2 shots.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, 2
so
shots.
if you get 1, you're probably committing to a
Right.
second one too.
Right, and I know, I understand they're anxious and they're waiting, and these are the elderly population, and they have underlying health conditions that they're sequestered to their homes, and they do
Okay.
want to get out, but.
Well, if you've given the phone number there for
Yep.
Lorraine County Public Health, that's best you can do right
Yeah.
now.
So, but I did want to make that a point to let you know that I do get quite a few of those phone calls, so if
Yeah, I'm
anybody's
sure.
watching, they know to call the health board.
Yeah.
Other than that,
Any questions for Linda?
No, I have none.
Okay. All right, the next one, Lorco, I do have in here a prepared resolution. This is the appointment of the Amherst Township Representative and alternate to Lorraine County Rural Wastewater District Board of Trustees. Currently, I serve as the rep and David as the alternate. This resolution is basically just doing the same thing for the new term. So I will make the motion. Section 1, the Amherst Township Board of Trustees appoints Mr. Neil Lynch as the Township Representative to Lorraine County Rural Wastewater District, Lorco Board of Trustees for the next term running from March 27, 2021 to March 27, 2024. If the Amherst Township Board of Trustees has not appointed a Lorco representative upon the expiration of Mr. Lynch's term, Mr. Lynch shall serve the Amherst Township as the Amherst Township representative to the Lorco Board of Trustees until a successor is appointed. In Section 2, as the Amherst Township Board of Trustees appoints Mr. David Uhrig as the Township's alternate representative to the Lorco Board of Trustees for the next term, running from March 27, 21 to March 27, 2024. If the Amherst Township Board of Trustees has not appointed a Lorco rep upon the expiration of Mr. Uhrig's term, Mr. Uhrig shall serve as the Amherst Township alternate representative to the Lorco Board of Trustees until a successor is named. The rest is all boilerplate, so that'll be my motion.
Second.
I will second that motion.
Okay, Chris, I've made the motion and Denny seconded.
Okey-dokey. Lynch,
Yes?
Abraham,
Yes.
Keurig.
Yes.
And that number, Chris?
1621.
And if I could get a certified copy of that, and you can either give it to me and I'll carry it in, or we can email it, you know, scan it and email it to Gene Toy.
Is that 1-6?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the next order of business is the Phase 2 MS4 regulatory requirements. Typically, we handle this on the second Tuesday of the month, but just a couple of things to point out to the township. I provided you in your packet with a document here. There's 2 things. We've got the Engle Ditch Phase 3 that we were approved for. I still do not have any of the documentation to advertise for bid. So I've asked for that again. And also the grant application, the 2021 grant application is due March 31st, 2021. I'm asking again to get a meeting so we can go through that. At this point, Kevin, I would assume after Phase 3, there's a question, are we completely done with Engel? In my mind, we are, but I know at one time in a verbal conversation, there was some question, not with you, but with the county. Well, there may be another Phase 4, some other work, but I'm not sure what that would be if Phase 3 covers everything. You'll have to look at the prints, because that's where you get down in the fine detail, and unfortunately with Phase 3, I don't, there was some of that shown in the Phase 2, but that was just because they were moving ahead on it, but we don't have the complete detail on Phase 3 yet.
Has he received his money yet for Phase 2?
No,
He has not.
he has not. That's another question, which I will probably be asking for a special meeting, though I don't see how we get anything accomplished unless we have both Pete Sawick and Don Romankak present. Because right now I'm talking with different people on the phone, trying to get answers in writing, and again, I'm just not getting a clear picture as to where this is. The last thing we received, which you would have seen by email, was a document from Pete Sawick. It actually didn't come from Pete. I don't recall. I didn't even recognize the individual that sent the email. He had to open up the attachment. That attachment, this has got to be, hang on, do I even have it here? Okay, that attachment is dated December 23rd of 2020. So the email would have been sometime a few days after that, regarding final payment, Engle Ditch Phase 2. And it says, gentlemen, Chris, you did see this, right? I'm just asking because it's titled gentlemen, but I'm just teasing you there. But the county engineer recommends final payment to Mark Haynes Construction Incorporated in the amount of $82,633.60 for the attached application number 3, subject to the terms of your memorandum of understanding with SWAC and subject to satisfactory completion of 1 site restoration item, 1 weather conditions permit, seed mulch, the pictured access lane northeast of the gun club culvert, and it gives the specific station numbers there on Pete's sign off. So Denny, the short answer, no, they haven't been paid. But I'm not sure the reference in that, when it says gentlemen, it's coming to the Amherst Township Trustees, and then it does reference the MOU that we signed with the county. Well, the MOU, I've got a copy here, and if you want, there's copies here for everyone, but I figure we've had so much to cover tonight, we're going to have to do this a separate meeting, plus I want the right people there. Otherwise, we're going to sit at a meeting, there's going to be a whole bunch of questions, and we aren't going to be able to walk out with an answer. It's the people that control the purse strings. The MOU shows a total cost for Engle Ditch Restoration Phase 2 of $111.35, with stormwater awarding $64,410. Well, to me, you subtract those 2 items, which comes in $40-some thousand. That's what the township share should have been. But, and let's see, I had the township share, Pringle Ditch Phase 2 would have been, it was actually $48,080 is what it would have been. Realize when we got that, that was with that culvert going in.
Right.
The township went ahead and spent $15,000, and you helped spearhead through this. You know what you had to do. We decided we used $15,000 of township general fund to what we thought was saving the township in the county. $48,000, yeah. Well, somehow, and that was all done prior to this MOU engagement.
Right.
Then we got this. And I'm all confused, and I've shared with you guys before, talking with Pete, hey, what's this new detail? All of a sudden the price went back up. with the culvert coming out, I didn't see additional work being done. I was so confused, and Pete told me he was trying to make sure he got the maximum amount of stormwater district grant funds for it, but somehow we weren't communicating well. And I said, Pete, I'm still confused, we need to see on this. And then he did call me back, said, yeah, I kind of understand what you're saying, but that's going to require more discussion with the stormwater district, which at that time was Jim Cordez and Don Romankek. Jim's now gone. So I was watching the bills. I want to make sure Chris didn't pay this, because if you recall, the trustees and Pete read the MOU differently too. Pete reads the MOU as a reimbursement grant. I've read that thing over multiple times. I don't see it as a reimbursement grant. Plus, not one of the previous projects have ever been run as a reimbursement. We call it County Stormwater District, and it's changed over the personnel there. They usually send over the check once they have proof that the work's been done, which proof is signed off by the county engineer. They give their portion, we give our portion, and everybody's happy. This is looking like they want us to pay this and then go for reimbursement, but I'm not exactly sure what we're getting reimbursed and how much. So now we control the purse string. And Denny, I realize a contractor's done a job, but I don't want to be the guy later to take care of that contractor and then be begging at the county, wait a minute, I disagree with what you guys are sending over here. They also did an addendum, which initially they had an estimate of around $12,500 for taking down those additional trees, remember, on the rim property? Because they said, hey, the contractor's here, we're going to extend this. Well, we already bid this out. We're going to extend this as an addendum because it'll be a lower cost, which makes sense. It does. Take those trees down now. I think ultimately it was only down around 3,000 once they got in there, Kevin. I don't know if they decided to save some trees or what they did there, or found out it cost less, but the cost was less. Well, I don't think that's Amherst Township, and I've asked before, well, who's paying that additional? In my mind, okay, that it makes sense, it's saving money. I wanted that to be stormwater funds, not township general funds, and that needs to be answered. And I have no issue if we pay what the MOU says, but then there's that balance coming in there. Because to my mind, we already paid $15,000 towards this. And it should be what the original 48 less. Well, we were expecting less 40-some thousand.
Well, that's just it. We should have gotten compensated at the 40-some thousand.
That's, again, till we sit down with the right people to get this through, I'm certainly not going to approve any payment. And I've been consistent in trying to reach them. That's why you don't always get everything in writing, and realize when people respond, they don't respond in writing. It's always, they say, quicker to call you. Well, so far, this last email of January 4th, I've had no response. Today's January 12th.
Haynes Construction?
Art?
I've not gotten an invoice to even pay them, so.
You may not, and that's why it was odd. Unfortunately, Chris, I didn't bring the original email. It was someone in the engineer's office. It was female. I did not recognize the name. So unless you opened up the attachment, you didn't even know it was there. The attachment was directed to the trustees. It's okay to pay this bill of that 82,000 and some change I mentioned earlier. And it's like, holy smokes, you're talking 82,000, you're talking at least, 17-18% of our general fund? Not of total general fund receipts on an annual basis. That's not going to happen. And that's not what we agreed to. So I know it was a hard swallow when we were asked to cover the cost of the culvert so that the property owner had access to his back property. And then as we were meeting during our work sessions, that's where the question came up, well, geez, we're probably better off buy that property from them if they're willing to sell. And that's, Denny, where you got involved in negotiation. And we went ahead and fortunately they did agree, it's actually $18,000 they sold the property to us for.
Right.
It's not like we want that property, they got no use for it, but it was to reduce the cost. So we're gonna have to have a separate meeting, but there's no need having the meeting unless the right people are there.
And the
Because
right people is Pete Zwick.
Pete and also, now it'll be Don Romankak, because we need both sides. Otherwise, it's like a ping pong, you're being bounced between them.
And is Don still there?
Don will still be there for stormwater. Ultimately, it's the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners are also the Stormwater District Board. But if it's as in the past, they've kind of left it up to Don Romankak, County Administrator,
Right.
and their Stormwater Advisory Committee.
Well, the county administrator doesn't know anything about
No, and that's it, you're gonna have some new individuals here, but fortunately Don's still there, and he's aware of the history. Pete's still there, he's aware of the history, but it just needs clarification before we start writing any check. I certainly don't expect this to be where we take on the burden of these large projects and then hope to get reimbursed from the county. You know, that seems kind of reverse.
it. Right.
They've got, you know, their finances are much stronger and much larger than ours are. You would think, if anything, it'd be the reverse way. But we even got to get things clear as to what the amounts are. So I've got a lot of documentation here on the history, but I would just recommend that, you know, your question was, has the contract been paid? No, but there is a document that was just sent out towards the end of December from the county engineer saying it's okay to pay.
Right.
But it's like, that was sent to us, who do they expect to pay and how much?
Yeah.
And that we need to get clarified, because that final engineer's estimate was not what we had when we submitted the grant application and received that MOU. Okay, and it doesn't take into account the fact we already purchased a piece of property to try and reduce the cost. And you remember the question even with Don, and I even took it to the Stormwater Advisory Committee, okay, we actually spent $18,000, but it saves over $40,000. We expect that to be our contribution.
That's right.
So time will tell. But anyway, you've got that last communication, you've got a physical copy, but I haven't received any specific response on that yet.
And that's this document, the Angle Ditch Phase 3 document preparation?
Correct, and then also the 2021 grant application, because that's also important. That's due March 31st, and I know that Don Romankak, boy, when this was first put out, it was always pushed, get with your engineer. Well, that's what we want to do, but I need the engineer to, in this case, just one. You know, the engineer's office does very well. I don't want to be too critical, but we can't begin this without them unless we decide, because most likely it's going to start Battenhouse. If we just put together an application and said, okay, we'll put through, we're going to request a project total of $150,000, township willing to contribute $25,000, somewhere along this Battenhouse ditch, at the confluence of the Engle Ditch, but we don't know exactly how long it's going to be. We don't have the specifics to what's there, and we haven't gone through and received the easements rights from anybody, the signed easements. And we assume, because I've also had these verbal conversations, we assume this is just a continuation of the phase project, that it doesn't require the petition process, which goes before the Board of Commissioners. So those two items would be the two things I think are going to have to be a separate dedicated meeting. But again, we got that time deadline, March 31st. The expenditure of funds, we've got 2 years on those, and over a year's already passed now. And we can't bid it till we get the specs. So I don't know, Chris, if we'll deal with Phase 2 on stormwater and stormwater cleanliness next meeting. I hope we don't have to, since we covered it at this meeting. Okay, we'll move quickly through complaints here. Remy, the one there on Deer Run in regards to the drainage. the
You
la-
can zero that out, that lady's completely satisfied and everything has been solved.
Okay. All right, and then the property maintenance there, this was Juniper.
Yeah, that's as good as it's gonna get. I realize we're never gonna completely satisfy the complaintee, but,
Okay.
he's actually made some strides and it's as clean as it's gonna get.
There was a separate building put up there, if I
That's
recall you
correct.
said? Okay. Okay, and four, this was the one with the stop work order, down on Hidden Tree Lane for a fence. I haven't seen the final communication, and I hope it was done. And again, this is working with the new personnel in the prosecutor's office. But I know before he left, Jerry Ennis was going to send to the legal representative of Dan Hancock, which was Dave Douglas, a communication that essentially, Remy, my understanding was they're going to say, which the township pretty much agreed to, you can replace that fence, similar to what the old one was, but just recognize if the township has to do work down there, and Kevin, that would most likely be you, could be today the city of Lorraine, for water sewer. Based on the previous meeting we had, that may become the county if they take over water and sewer in that area. But there's no intent to take it down, but it would just be an acknowledgement by the property owner that we can't assure that fence doesn't come down if work needs to be done there, and we're not going to use taxpayer dollars to replace the fence. So I don't know if that document ever got sent. So I'm going to have to follow up, but realize I'll be dealing with new people, and I'm sure they'll be able to find it. And the new head of the civil division, I don't know if you guys are aware, is Dan Petticord. He's been with the prosecutor's office, so it's not a new person, but it'll be somewhat new to us.
So it was correct not to give him a permit for that fence because the fence is actually located on our property and not his?
That, I don't have the final word. It appears it is. Yeah, what you did wasn't an error, but it's an acknowledgement that, let me put it to you this way. You can plant anything you want in the right-of-way, but there's no guarantee that it won't come out later. As people plant bushes, landscaping, you see they put in the right-of-way mailboxes all the time.
But a fence usually requires a zoning permit, and in this case, he was given a permit,
He was given a permit by the township in the past, yes.
but I would not give him another permit to put that fence up. I told him,
Right. Yeah, what would settle this is the letter from our legal counsel to the property owner's legal counsel. The only thing I can't commit was that sent? Because, as you're transitioning, someone's retiring, new regime coming in.
right.
They probably had a lot of stuff they were trying to clean up. Knowing Jerry, I expect it was done. I just can't say with certainty that it was. I know we had the conversation, and that's the way it ended. Jerry was going to send a letter to their legal counsel, so I don't know for certain if that happened, and I don't know if the legal counsel for the property owner responded. I just don't know.
Okay.
So we'll leave that on there, but I'm just
Sure.
bringing you up to speed as to the discussion that happened prior to our last Board of Trustee meeting,
Okay.
okay?
Are we going to move on appointing Rose Besker to the middle assistant grades class?
Yeah, I've got that under new business, Denny. Let me just,
Because we're through with the other two items, right?
yeah, Lorco is 6.
That's what this is. Yeah.
Yeah, before we get to Roses, now for the other items on the agenda which are open that have specific assigned responsibilities, under item 9, A through G, is there anything that any of the trustees need to bring up there?
Nothing at this time.
No,
Okay, then we'll move on to the new business. What Denny's just asked for, you have a resolution in front of you. This resolution is appoint Rose Betchker as the media assistant at wage class C. This is really, well, let me first go through the motion just to bring it to the floor. I'm going to skip the whereases. It's now therefore be it resolved by the trustees of the Township of Amherst, State of Ohio, motion number, section 1, motion number 12720 is reaffirmed and Mrs. Rose Betchker is appointed to, that should be position, not potion, of media assistant at wage class C for 2021, effective January 1st, 2021. The rest is boilerplate. So that'll be my motion to get it to the floor.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, and let me just explain this, is typically at the zoning commission, or I'm sorry, at the organizational meeting, is the trustees go through a reappointment of affirmation of all township employees and boards, and what those, whether they're paid a wage or whether it's paid by meeting. Again, I use the template from the 2020 org meeting for 2021. We did not have this position, but we realized to actually hold a virtual meeting or to record our meetings and put them on YouTube, and as Colin pointed out, it's nice to hear someone was looking at them, is we know people are hesitant to come in and see a meeting, and yet we are supposed to have our meetings open, but we restrict how many people can come in here. A typical meeting, it's not an issue. But I didn't have Rose listed on the org meeting, so I wanted to make sure we formalize that here as to having Rose there as the media assistant here. So essentially, she is the backup or fill-in for Georgianne, and there was a potential, we almost had her here tonight, because Georgianne was just recovering from an illness from this past week, and we weren't sure what was going to happen. So that's all this is. So is there any other questions? Okay, then roll call, Chris?
Lynch,
Yes?
Abraham,
Yes.
Euring.
Yes.
And the number on that, Chris?
Is 17.
1721. Okay, our next, and H was the public hearing regarding the settlement agreement. We've already discussed that. The next regular meeting will be January 26, 2021. There was a question if we needed to schedule a work session here, and let me get up my schedule. I really think we're going to want to do this. Okay, can we set a tentative date as Thursday, January 21st, for a trustee work session?
January 21st?
Yes,
That's a
Thursday,
week from-
January 21st at 7:30 a.m. But this is conditional on the county engineer and Don Romanchak. In county engineer, I mean by Pete Zawick, not Ken Carney, but Pete, who works for Ken, on their availability. So if they are available to go through this payment to Mark Haynes to get that set as the amount, who's paying what, and then also to get an invoice on that amount.
January 21st.
January
What time?
21st at 7:30 a.m.
7:30 a.m. January the 21st, 7:30 a.m.
And Chris, you wouldn't have to be there. If we get the right information, we'll get it to you as quick as we could so that you can have the bills prepared for the 26th of January. Okay? And I've got for the trustees, before you leave, I can give you documentation to review before that meeting, but as long as you bring it back to that meeting so we don't have to copy it again. All right? Okay, our next regular meeting will be on Tuesday, January 26th here at the Township. Is there any other audience concerns or questions? Okay, is there any need for an executive session?
No, I do not.
Okay, then can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Abraham,
Yes.
Euring,
Yes.
Lynch.
Yes.